Oh, yes, again, continuing on with the tarot card talk through. Now, remember, again, we're talking in tarot in terms of psychological, artistic, creative, and not as divination. I don't do fortune telling. I don't know if I even believe in fortune telling. I think it can be a dangerous thing to tell someone's fortune because you may put them in, if you give them bad news, you may put them in a kind of a state of worry for no reason. And also, no matter what anyone says, I always believe that ultimately human beings are, the agents of free will, that we always have choices of free will. And when you tell someone's fortune, you do divination for them, you kind of impose a fatalistic mindset upon them. And so it's not for me. I'm not saying that other people who do it are doing anything wrong. I'm just saying it's not for me. Now, today's card is the Four of Swords. Now, Swords is all about actions and conflicts and dynamic changes and sweeping changes, but this card suggests the opposite. We have an effigy or a kind of a mausoleum type image of a knight or a warrior in stone in his tomb inside a church. You have three swords on the wall and one sword on this part here. Now, what this card represents is a period of recuperation. It could be following an illness. It's not death. A death would be, there's no finalization here. It's not a death card where the aspects of the ego have been killed and they have to begin again, or at end of a cycle. This is more of a continuation of a cycle, but however, if you were sick or were not well, if you had recovering from an operation, this card would probably represent that period. So you're coming, you're relaxing, you're getting your thoughts together, and you're planning for the future. But one of the things I often found interesting about this card, no one taught, especially in this Rider Waite version, is there's a sword down here. So the three swords are hung up to say, uh, you know, that challenge has been met, the worst of it, but a sword is held on here just in case it's needed in a hurry, so the knight can reach over and grab it. Any true warrior and knight knows that you do not go completely, let down your guard completely, that you must give yourself an option in case of a sneak attack. And that's kind of like that here. Now, when I say sneak attack, I don't mean enemies attacking you necessarily, but like, you could have a relapse in the illness or something. So it's to remind you to take care of yourself. So if you had an operation, say, and don't go running around afterwards if you recovered from an addiction. They'll always be wary that there will be dangers. Like people who are alcoholics, you're going to go to a restaurant and you're going to have to learn how to deal with people having wine, and you can't because it could put you back down in the alky street again. So I think this is quite a beautiful card in many ways because there's kind of a sadness and sort of a melancholy about it. All my favorite tarot cards all have the ones that invoke a sense of melancholy and kind of like contemplative thinking and a little bit of kind of sadness and a little bit of kind of longing and a little bit of kind of dreaming. And these are my favorite kind of cards. I'd rather get these than get cards that say everything is going to be great, or because these are challenges to the psyche, they're challenges to the ego. They're telling you to actually think for yourself and make plans and do things and look after yourself. They're not telling you to this, that, and the other. They're they're not giving you orders or fatalistic ideas. They're almost like companion type suggestions. So this would be this. That's what. So the knight is not dead. The knight is representing recuperation. But also you could see it from another way. Suppose you had in the old days you would have had a war, and you may have had knights who were killed. Well, other knights who would go to the cathedral or the church or the place where their comrades had fallen were buried, and instead of saying getting revenge, they were thinking, well, a better way to honor our fallen would be to make peace, so it doesn't happen again. So that it's all about that. Like if you're going through a divorce and you have a couple of kids, instead of saying I'm going to take that bastard down because he's going to go down, this card would represent. Now hold on a second. What about the kids? Are you going to use your kids as? See, a lot of women today make horrible choices in partners, and I see this with the psychopath hysteria. They move from one horrible man to the next because of their own bad decisions, and then instead of like taking a pausing with this card and saying, well, maybe I need to be take it easy instead of jumping on the next asshole, uh, they decide that to blame the men or use the kids as weapons, and that's toxic and dangerous. So this is all about a recovery, a restoration period, and contemplation, thinking of the future. And it's about wisdom. It's about loss. It's about loss. It's about it's a bit sad. It's not depressing though, and it's not about hopelessness. It's about this is the time for us to, or people, or ourselves, or country, or anyone you know who ever went through a bad period. This is the period afterwards where you sit down and think, you know, I got to get my shit together, and I got to start living doing better, being nice to people that were, you know, that kind of thing, or you know, we got to I got to do something to make sure this shit never happens again, and that's what this card is all about. It's a very, like I said, it's a very beautiful card, you know, and when you think about it in that way. So the Four of Swords, uh, rest, recuperation, temporary exile, even not to the severity of the Hermit card, perhaps, which we'll talk about another time, but like time out and a time for wisdom, focus, and shall we say, not non-intense contemplation. The Four of Swords. Thank you.